Good evening. Welcome to our code enforcement workshop. The date is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023. The time is 6:05. Can we, Madam Clerk, roll call?
Commissioner Kelly,
Present.
Vice Mayor Irvin,
Present.
Mayor Taylor.
Present. As we stand for our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for all of many blessings. We thank you for this day. We thank you, God, as we come together, give us wisdom, knowledge, understanding to those things which are pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of Allegiance.
Girl, I'm gonna meet.
We're going to now open up the floor for public comments. And again, we're speaking on the agenda items only, limited to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
would you like to read it? We don't need to. You're right. So we have public comments is open.
Good afternoon, Audrey Dominguez, 1147 Jan Avenue. What I'd like to address is the process of the special magistrate. I was actually present February 28th, at 10 a.m. And there was a lot of businesses, owners that came to address their tickets or their fine. What I didn't understand is if this is a process where you have a magistrate that is supposed to listen to the cases, and it's basically like you're in court. So to me, if an officer is not present, I don't think that we should wait until that code enforcement officer arrives in order to hear the case, because that happened. And his case was not heard. They kept on saying, oh, we're gonna wait until the code enforcement officer arrives. I never heard of that. But that I observed. So I think it's something that should be looked at. And if the officer is not present, they should dismiss that fine or whatever the case may be. Thank you.
Public comment is still open. Public comment is closed. We're going to go into our first discussion item, which is code enforcement complaints, concerns, and challenges.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to my colleagues for agreeing to the workshop. I had asked for what I felt was all of the three individuals that report to the commission for various information. And of course, doesn't preclude if you have any questions or things you want to ask them during this time. Obviously, it's definitely appropriate. But as I thought about it, one of the reasons why I wanted to have this workshop prior to coming back, and since I've been on the dais, I've heard so many numerous complaints reference code enforcement, the magistrate process. I heard it both here in the meeting, and I've heard it at Meet Me Monday as well. And so I wanted to have this workshop to not only bring it some light to it, but as they say, address what I call the elephant in the room. Because when you get this many, well, I'll say when I get as many complaints as I get from residents and business owners about code issues, special magistrate process, then to me, the commission needs to take a look at it. If you notice, I think was passed out or sent to you, things I requested from the city clerk, from the interim city manager as well as the city attorney. Regarding it, I should say, various things. One was the resident business owners who come before the commission since January of 2022 up until March 8th of 2023 to complain or have concerns about code enforcement or special masters process. We've also asked from the city interim city manager various things, including the complaints, either verbally or in writing, and any follow-up action that was taken, if any, and the names, address dealing with the special master. I also requested, you see on the number 4, regarding customer service training, if so, when, how often is training required, if any, and the flow chart. For the city attorney, I asked for the question of anyone who feels the special masters for citations and fine issues incorrect, what's the process they have, and also regarding a quarterly report of code enforcement activities, including complaints, fines collected, and compliance achieved. We all know that we want businesses and residents to be in compliance, but it's never designed to be an intimidation or just to collect money or what have you, but to get residents and businesses to comply with our code in a fair and equitable means. I have received numerous complaints and concerns that that's not occurring. And so I wanted to come forward with the workshop. I didn't want to just have a singular meeting with the manager regarding it, or the clerk or the attorney for that matter. So that's why I had asked for this workshop, because I continue to hear the concerns and complaints. And so we need to at least address what's going on, particularly with what's happening with the complaints, if there are any follow-ups, if there are any disciplinary action taken, or all of the complaints not valid, or they're not with any merit. If that's the case, to see what that looks like as well. So you have before you, that was given to you from the manager's office, reason, solution. I will say that some of these obviously were, in my opinion, justified. Some of them, but these solutions to me are not up to par. I'll say it like this. But that's what I wanted to put on the record at first. I wanted to hear from my colleagues as well. If you had a chance to look at the information received. I know the attorney, I believe, is on the line, Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
And
Michelle Austin Pammy's on the line.
So one of the questions that you can think about answering, I think you heard the resident, but it was one that I asked the attorney to provide information on the process, the special masters for citations, fines, that process, if you feel that it's not fair, but also in addition, if an officer is not present, can the case continue to go forward without the officer being there and someone either in their place, or should it be deferred, or is that just up to the special master? So I that's a question that I have that you can
Address.
you know,
Yes, I
think about
can.
answering, but I'll Mr. Mayor, I'll defer while they're waiting. I see the attorneys coming in. Any other questions or comments that you all might have while I wait on that particular answer? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem, Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor,
Vice Mayor?
yes, I too sat in the magistrate meeting that we had last month. Mostly because I too get a lot of complaints about code enforcement. Now, I'm just looking at this form that I was just giving, and I see huge tree overgrown. Code enforcement should be citing us. They should, because I passed by the old water plant and the old dump that sits right across the street from us, and it's overgrown. So why aren't we, code enforcement is supposed to be fair to all. So in that matter, we need to clean up our own house before we force others to clean up theirs. Also, I didn't understand, and maybe there's a reason why, but I noticed many people getting fines and having to pay their fine, their court costs. But there were at least one that had like 5 fines, I believe, and we wiped them away. We threw it out, or however the language they use for it, but it was thrown out. So how do we decide who's gets thrown out, who stay, that kinds of things? And even listening to one of the business owners trying to explain himself, it's like they didn't want to hear it. And sometimes listening makes a world of difference. Just listen to what the people are trying to tell you. Sometimes could help. There were some nice things that did come out, that we gave people extensions for 30 days to get their things together or whatnot. And so they were given a stay of execution, so to say, to get it finished, getting it together. I see that there's twice on here, it comes up rooster, like a rooster's complaint. So I'm like, these people that may have been cited for rooster noise, are they their pets? Or I was just a little confused about that. But yeah, that would be, and I ask constantly when it comes to apartment complexes, who is it that oversee what is going on in those apartments, especially the ones that are ill kept? But because I see something here that says AC leaking through the wall, but the AC was like, you have to have a permit to replace your AC. If so, like what AC, a wall unit, or is it like, just curious? I'm just a little confused with some of the complaints that people were cited for. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem.
Uh,
Madam Attorney, was she saying something?
I think Michelle Austin Pamies was saying something. Michelle, feel free to continue.
Okay. Madam Attorney, as it relates to the magistrate, can that question be answered? Or is that's out of your?
Well, generally speaking, I think the magistrate is going to want the most information available. And because of that, they would like to probably wait till the officer comes so that the officer can give the side of the city if there are any questions that the magistrate has. It's just like somebody said, it's just like court earlier, and you're right. You want to get both sides of the story, both the city's position as well as the person that's appearing. So that's what judges do. And so these are kind of like, the special magistrates are kind of designed to be your judges for code enforcement. So they want to be fair and impartial and listen to the evidence. And so, it's not like traffic court where, the officer doesn't show up, your case gets thrown out. That's not intended to be like that. It's supposed to be where the city has a position. And I'll tell you, it's good that you all are advocating for, the residents. Obviously, you want a fair process, but a lot of times what happens is with cities is they want things done. They want things cleaned up. They want it, they want things, so it sounds like what you all are looking to do is to have something that you think is maybe more balanced, and maybe the purpose of this is to try to figure out how you get more balance for the business owners, the residents, the people who are complaining about the issue. I don't know, but the answer to the question that was pending, which I think Michelle was about to answer, was about the process. And I think that's the only question. So hopefully I've answered that about, why you might wait for an officer.
Right,
Mr. Mayor, I think that officer that day had car trouble. And that, I think it was a business owner. He waited like an hour for him to show up. Like, I don't want to wait an hour for my doctor or if he's running late. So we have to figure that out some kind of way.
And if you wanted to, you know, if the city wanted to have some sort of policy in place where the case just gets rolled or something if the officer doesn't show, that could be something that you know, legal might be able to address with your special magistrates. But I think, you know, hopefully my answered your question, which is you want a fair and balanced process. So you want to be able to wait for you know, someone to show up so that the city's position can be you know,
Or at least give them the option to reset, you know, because he wasn't there. They should have had an option to reset another day or wait. It's up to them.
I think that's what the.
Yes,
attorney-
this is Michelle Austin, Pammy. Do you hear me? I was disconnected from Zoom.
Yes, we hear you. Madam
Yes,
Attorney.
I really did want to address the special magistrate issue. What happens is that when the notice is given to the resident or business, there is a time for the hearing. There isn't a particular minute for their particular case to be heard. So if the special magistrate is holding it for 2 hours, they are supposed to be there for the entire 2 hours period. They could be called first, they could be called last. So if the code enforcement officer is not there to hear the case, they may push it back to the end of the schedule, but it's not something that should make a difference to the resident in the sense that they were supposed to be there for the entire period anyway.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly.
thank you. Madam Attorney that's on the line, I think what the question was, it can be pushed back, and the Vice Mayor alluded that there have been times, I guess, when he's done that. My question would be, if the officer is not there, should that case be pushed back, or how would that work? If the officer is not there at all and does not.
If the officer is not there at all, there wouldn't be the evidence for the case to be presented, so it wouldn't be heard. It would be moved. If the officer doesn't come for the entire hearing period, but if the officer comes late, that's the part that doesn't make a difference because they were supposed to be there the entire period anyway. But if the officer doesn't show up, there wouldn't be a hearing.
There won't be a hearing?
No, because there wouldn't be any evidence.
So if the officer writes the citation, whether it's business or residential, whatever, that officer is supposed to be there for that case to be heard by the special masters. And if they're not there, it should be moved or rolled over to the next time.
If it's the first, what they call a finding of fact hearing, not the one for just the fine, but the one for the finding of fact, for somebody to testify, I went there, I found this to be wrong, or I took a picture, etc. That person has to be present or it wouldn't be heard. But for the fine, it's because they already did the finding of fact hearing and they're just counting the number of days since the violation. They don't have to be present for that, but someone from code enforcement would be presenting.
Okay, I want to hear the yes or no answer, because you're giving me a lot of different things.
The rest or no answer is if for a finding of fact hearing, if an officer is not present at all, it cannot be heard.
It cannot be heard. Okay. All right.
In that same vein, Commissioner, if Officer A, Madam Attorney, wrote the ticket and does not show up, and I think we had an issue with this when somebody came up to the commission about this. Officer A didn't show up, but Officer B represented that issue. Is that same courtesy extended? Like, does the case get thrown out then as well? If it's not the original officer?
Well, it has to be somebody with the evidence. That's the thing. It has to be somebody with the evidence. So if they came with pictures with the evidence, they could be heard.
Okay. And then
If they had the evidence, they could be heard.
So if it's not, though it may not be the original officer, but if the officer that is standing in proxy for the original officer comes with the evidence, then they will
Like
be,
with pictures.
they will, okay. And then my next question is the same courtesy that is granted to the officer, if the officer is late, is that same courtesy granted to the resident if the resident is late?
Well,
Or does that
generally,
case have to be moved to a different day? Or will they be moved? Will their case still be heard?
well, in terms of discretion, I don't know exactly. I'm saying that the person who had a violation is supposed to be there. If they don't come, they are notified. It will not be heard at all.
No, if they're late, I said they're
Oh.
late. Because you talked about that every resident
The
gets a
lateness, that's
time.
exactly what I'm saying. The lateness, they would be moved to, they would be, if they show up and say, this is, Michelle, I was told the hearing was at 3 o'clock. It's now 4 o'clock. I'm here, but the special magistrate is still here. Can I be heard? They would probably just go up to her and say, this person is there, and they would do it on the same day.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
I want to be very clear. So I can write the citation, I can take the pictures, but then I can give them to Mayor Taylor and he can present the case. How can he do
Generally,
that when he doesn't know? He wasn't there.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. If they have evidence, the evidence may come in different forms. Normally, it's going to be pictures taken.
Well,
which
she's
show-
the term
Which
picture.
show and keep in mind, there are like, tons of these cases that the officers see. And so they may not remember everything, but they do have evidence generally in the file. It could be different types of evidence. The pictures are the best evidence, and those are the kind of things that are normally shown. So in that case, and you all allow, yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to I was gonna ask the manager and
Yeah.
code in a second.
Yes, but the evidence, yes, it can be given to another code enforcement officer. That officer can then go with the pictures and present the case.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, how often does that happen? Because I'm like the mayor, we're saying to residents, they need to be there, whatever. Then to me, the officer need to be there too, but I understand things can happen. How often does that happen?
So through the mayor to Commissioner Kelly, I don't have the substantive data to provide an exact answer to that. To my understanding, it's infrequently, but that's certainly something we could look into to get you a more firm answer.
Okay, Madam Attorney, that's something I want to look at, because seems like we're holding residents or business owners to one set of standards, and we're not, as Vice Mayor said, with the overgrown stuff, we're holding ourselves to a different level. But if it's allowed, it's allowed this moment. So that's the law. Okay. Mr. Mayor, I had another question I wanted to get to. The process, I guess Ms. Pam, if she's answering or turn this here, the alternative process or what recourse a person has if they feel they've been, not given a fair shot in the special magistrate process.
they can appeal.
The appeal process, how does that work?
It's the same. I sent that in the information you all have. They would appeal within 30 days of the finding of the order of the magistrate to the circuit court.
So the appeal is going straight to the circuit court.
Yes, sir. That's how it is in statute. That's the process that would be followed.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to just take up all the time. Anybody's got,
Any other, well, I think she answered my question. Any other questions or concern on these topics? Vice Mayor?
Just, thank you. I've just always been concerned that sometimes, and I mentioned it when code enforcement had an event recently, a workshop, I learned some things that I didn't know. And therefore, I felt like code enforcement needed to have like a workshop for the residents and the business owner, given in a timely manner so that they could come out and hear about things that are not allowed. Like one of the business owners purchased a business in 2019. Something happened, code enforcement wound up being on the opposite side of his fence and into the business. And they cited him for there being walls, like a kitchen was there and an office was there, but it wasn't there initially. And his response was that he purchased a property like that. And it made me think about Commissioner Williams when she was talking about people that purchase homes and they're not, it's different from what we have. And he was trying to explain some other stuff, but at the end of the day, he had to pay all of his fines. In spite of he purchased the property in 2019, not knowing that changes had been made in the building, but not on paper. Kind of bothers me. And I'm still bothered as I looked down and saw the Rads family name on this list. We're making some houses do stuff that we're not making other houses do. And that's not fair. Not when I can stand at the Rod's house and walk down one block and turn right. And the shrubberies are so high, I can't even see the next house. That's not fair. It's not fair. And we need to make some changes. That's not fair.
Mr. Mayor.
No problem, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me. So, first of all, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to, so I don't know if I'm going to play devil's advocate or just kind of have a comments on both sides. Since I've been on the board, I've heard many complaints, many complaints about code enforcement, about the way in which code enforcement officers, either the treatment of our residents and our businesses, or the biases that may exist. So I think there's something there that we need to work on. There is something systemic that's happening because it is it's something that's being said and on overdrive or repeated. So we're going to have to see what's happening on the inside to really work through how to fix. I've seen I just read something about diversity training or sensitivity, or so there's something that we need to work through. However, now I'm going to play a devil's advocate part. So, however, we talk about beautification and we talk about, what we're doing in our city, but at the same time, we also have residents that we have to, there has to be something done. And I had this conversation with the manager. We, just like Vice Mayor said, there are properties that are owned by residents, by people that have been ignored. No one is touching. Fines have been ran up. There's liens. What are we doing with that? So now it's that next layer of where do we go? Because that's outside of code enforcement. Now we're talking legal. Now we're talking foreclosures. Now we're talking something different. I know, and we talked about, I think I saw someone talk, say, I think I read about a tree. A tree cost me $1,500 because it broke my fence that was not on my property, but I, complained to code to please get this, but I couldn't because it's not on my property, right? But the tree still fell and broke an iron fence. So at the same time, we have to work with our residents. And so we have to come up with strategies like let's send out mailers to every single resident outlining the do's and don'ts of their property. Shrubbery, trees, grass, overgrown. We talk about open storage. It is time that we let our residents know. And then on top of that, let our business owners know the do's and don'ts, licenses, occupational licenses. What are those things that they need to do in terms of paying fines, not paying fines? How does that work? So I think we need to think a little bit more. There has to be something that needs to be done now, letting people know the do's and don'ts of code. And then the fix through the manager's office, there has to be something, there has to fix a systemic issue that people are complaining. And that is true. And so what is that about? And we got to fix that. But we know that the code department is not going to be a department that we love, that everybody likes. Everybody's not going to like being fined. So you're going to have people that's going to hate it. And we're going to, as a board, have to say, but these are our rules. These are our rules, follow them. But we also need to ensure that our departments are following our rules that we're enacting as well. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Anyone else on
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Kelly?
I think all of us are in agreement that folks need to follow rules. I think the challenge is that my colleagues are mentioning, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have this workshop is the rules tend to move. As was said, on this street, this is allowed, go around the corner, that's not allowed. It's almost like some places can get cited without even doing anything much, while others have numerous violations and nothing is occurring. And so something has to give, because you don't have this many people complaining all the time and something not be to it. And I'm tired of coming to meetings, hearing it, and then watching people go leave this dais and we don't do anything as a board. So the first thing I want to ask, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, when we get complaints that are substantiated, what takes place? And secondly, as I indicated in the question asked, when was the last time we have had training? My colleague mentioned diversity training, but training in general, whether you want to call it customer service, because I think everybody's had that. When was the last time we had training, and what discipline has been taking place for folks who have not had complaints that were justified? Mr. Mayor, to the manager.
Mr. Manager?
Through the mayor to Commissioner Kelly. So for all of the departments, there's a process for disciplinary action for whenever an employee doesn't follow our policies and procedures. And that's enacted across all departments, including code enforcement. Those complaints are received, as you've seen in your packet, they're reviewed, they're looked at, and action is taken. There is also a progressive disciplinary action that is taken for all code enforcement officers that are not in compliance with our rules and regulations and policies and procedures. Just to kind of, you didn't ask, but just to jump ahead of this, to give a perspective from the management's office, there's a strong concern when we receive complaints about both sides of the story. So one of the things that we have done from the management's office to try to get ahead of that is the issuance of body cameras. So there's been multiple situations since I've been here as your interim city manager, and when I was here as your assistant city manager before, where a code enforcement officer say, I went on this property, I followed the rules, I followed the policies and procedures, and the resident will say just the opposite. So you have two conflicting stories there. So the purpose of the body cam is to have the true story. They have to be on. An employee or code enforcement officer will be disciplined if they turn them off, if they get into an engagement with a resident where there's no footage there. So then that way, we'll actually have the real story visual as to what happened when that code enforcement officer engaged that resident on their property. So that's something to look forward to. We actually did a requisition on those body cameras last year. Got those paid for the end of this year in the fourth quarter. I got them issued last month. We're going through training right now. We expect those to be on the street within the next 30 to 45 days. So I think that from the management's office, that's something that we're implementing, that we're looking to do to really kind of take on full force, not only with our code enforcement, but any complaints that we receive with our police department as well. And to follow up with the second question, there was a second question through the mayor to Commissioner Kelly.
Commissioner Kelly, you had another question?
So two.
Well, I wanted to know what discipline is taking place. You said everybody gets disciplined across all the departments, and that's good. But we're talking about code enforcement right now. So what takes place? Because in some of these here, you have where complaints were given. So I want to know what corrective action you're saying. Basically, it's corrective action that's done for all employees, which is fine. If that's your answer, I just want to know, because if folks are not doing what they're supposed to do, or the complaints that you are receiving, whatever that process is, and since I don't know what it is, I'd like to get a copy of it for all of us. We can see what that process is, because what I hear a lot of is people complain and nothing occurs. Whether it's writing, we have a policy, or they just verbally, because I've had people say they've come to the office and complain and nothing happened. I don't know, because, that's under your purview. So I can only ask that question in this setting. I will say this, because I know we're running short of time. I'm not going to just allow this to, if you will, go away. And that's one of the reasons why I propose in my discussion about quarterly reports of code enforcement activities, including complaints, fines collected, and compliance achieved. Because as Commissioner Williams said, we've heard this for too long. So there's something there. So training is going to take place in the next 30, 45 days, should have occurred already, considering all the complaints that you've been given. And body cam for code enforcement is going to be coming pending, I guess, financial approval. Is that what I heard, Mr. Manager?
Financial approval of the training?
No. Body cam. You said they're supposed to be getting body cam pending something.
We've already acquired the body cameras. We do have them now. They're being issued, and as soon as the training, every officer is required to go through training before they're put on the street with them. So once the training is completed for all the officers, which we expect to be done in 30 to 45 days, those body cam footages will be on the street. And anytime that we receive a complaint, or you want to have information regarding a complaint, anyone can do a public records request, and certainly as a member of the commission, we'll just provide you with the footage for yourself.
So basically, in the next 30, 45 days, everything is going to kick off. Everything's going to be in place.
Well, not sure.
Trainings will take place, body cams will be in place within the next 30, 45 days.
For clarification, training for the utilization of the body cam footage is occurring now, and within the next 30 to 45 days, those body cameras will be issued and on the street.
Okay, and the training part, not training of body cams, but training in terms of officer training, as one of my colleagues mentioned, diversity, that training, that's what I'm referencing.
So I recall there was a question in your packet concerning customer service training, and is it required under the code enforcement code? It is not. However, we have provided that on an annual to semi-annual basis. The last time code enforcement officers received customer service training was last year in 2021. Well, year before last now in 2021.
Okay, there go part of the answer right there. Okay, Madam Attorney, I since it's a workshop, I'll get with you, because I want to put in legislation form, mandating those reports, et cetera. I'm listening to the manager, give us these timelines, so I'll see how that works. But I will say to my colleagues, to the manager and everyone else, when folks keep complaining, and I know people try to get out of things or whatever, two things need to occur. We need to hear what our residents or business folks are saying. And number two, we need to devise the policy or whatever to address them. So part of that is training, a part of that is body cam, a part of that is educating our residents. I don't know whether a mailer is feasible or doable for all the things that they may not know. Then we need to look at that, and we need to look at it as soon as possible. So I'm going to leave it at that, because there's something still there. There's something still there, and I still didn't get the answers on actual discipline. What I got was the city has a policy of discipline, but I didn't get one on what's happening to folks, particularly in code enforcement. But I'll keep bringing it up till it gets an answer. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Kelly. Mr. Manager, I do have a question. Within the training that you're providing for the body cam, can you include customer service and diversity training within that training? And then do a sign in, sign out log that verifies that this code enforcement officer took diversity training, took customer service training, as well as body cam training,
I
and
think,
provide that to the commission within the 45 days of your launch of the body cam, because customer service training is not that hard. Someone can do it within 45 days. We're just galvanizing everybody together and putting a class together. So I'm just asking, in the 45 days, can you provide customer service and diversity training?
Mr. Mayor, I think that's a brilliant idea, and are endeavoring to do that. Yes.
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Kelly?
Attorney, I guess if you could also find out, or you could tell us, because it was mentioned by a resident and one of my colleagues, when a special master throws out whatever or dismisses whatever in bulk or whatever, I guess they can do that. But is there a criteria set that meets how they allowed to just say all of these fines, whatever, wiped out arbitrarily, whatever that process is? I'd like to know.
Well, I'm not sure of a certain circumstance that you may be referring to, but it does happen when, let's say, the notice wasn't properly given, or when, there was some defect in the, and I hate to liken it to a traffic ticket, but let's just assume that if it were, but if there was a defect in the notice or how it was cited, or maybe the wrong code section was cited for whatever it was that actually happened in the pictures, or whatever is being described to the special magistrate, those would be reasons why it might be thrown out.
But they would be, the special magistrate would state that, correct?
I don't know this particular circumstances, Commissioner Kelly. I'd have to know what you're referring to, because I hate to just give you a blanket answer and the facts are something different. I would think that might be the case, but I don't know how it might have been done, whatever you're referring to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, is there anything else as it relates to the workshop? Hearing none. All right, so can I get a motion to adjourn so that we can have a recess before?
Yes, Mayor.
Sir,
Before you do, the next step for me was, I asked the attorney, the next step is at some point, the clerk can look at our schedules. I'd like a follow-up in 30 days, max, to see what has taken place.
okay,
What progress is taking place, what complaints, whatever is done, as a follow-up in 30 days. So that's for me the next step. Clerk can poll us on the when it'll be the meeting. Thank you.
all right, so all hearts and minds are clear. Madam Clerk and Mr. Manager, you have your marching orders. Motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Second, moved by Commissioner Kelly, second by Vice Mayor Irvin. This meeting is adjourned.